This is the account of Sandra Court's life and unfortunate untimely passing. Dorset Police have invested thousands of hours into trying to bring to justice the person who sadly ended her life. Unfortunately, this has not been the case. Sandra Court, also known as Sandy to her family and friends, was born on the 14th of April 1959 in Bournemouth, England, to Beryl and David. She had a younger sister called Jenny. She had grown up in the area of Bournemouth, a seaside town on the south coast of England, and had many friends in the area. She was described as popular, friendly, and bubbly, and she worked in the transactions department at Ambassador Life Insurance Company. She was a young woman with her whole life ahead of her, but was still living at home with her parents, Beryl and David. She had announced to her family and friends that she had decided to move abroad to Mallorca, Spain, to become a nanny, and was due to leave on the 7th of May. She had been excited about the change and was heading off to Spain to start a new dream of hers. As expected, with her bright personality, many people would miss her, and her office decided to have a party to say goodbye and wish her well. On May the 2nd, 1986, her and her co-workers were having drinks celebrating her departure to Spain. They visited different establishments and had decided to end the night at a nightclub called Steps on St. Swithin's Road in Bournemouth. Sandra was drunk and decided to call it a night and go home. She called a taxi which dropped her off at her younger sister Jenny's home in Muscliffe, a little past 2:45 a.m, the 3rd of May 1986. This is where Sandra's story takes a turn for the worse. She had got to her sister's only to realise that her sister was unfortunately not at home. Although they had been together earlier on in the evening, they had separated when Sandra decided to go to Steps nightclub, which was around 10:30 p.m. She said to the taxi driver she would wait outside for her sister's return, so he left her outside her sister's property. This is the last known person to have seen Sandra alive. On the morning of the 3rd of May, two boys out doing a Duke of Edinburgh award scheme made a horrifying discovery. They found Sandra's body laying in a stream of water by the Avon Causeway. They raised the alarm and Dorset Police started their investigation. At first, police believed that her body was possibly hurled from a bridge before it was found, but I believe that this was not the case. She had been strangled, but with minimum force. She was found in the clothes she had been wearing from the night before, which were a white blouse, wide black belt, and black ski trousers. Her handbag and jewellery were missing, but items were found over a few days into the investigation. They included her necklace, found half a mile from where her body was, her jacket in Branscore. Motorists spotted her plastic handbag at the side of the road in the New Forest. Her photo card was found near Stony Cross, a shoe near Ringwood, and part of her checkbook at Picket Post. It turned out after the taxi driver had dropped her off at her sister's, there was a sighting by some girls in the area who said they had seen her walking barefoot, carrying her stiletto-heeled shoes, and appearing to be slightly drunk. They passed this information on to the police, and police had surmised that Sandra had decided to walk to her parents' home, where she also lived in Moordown, although she sadly never arrived. Although police worked diligently to find Sandra's assailant, following hundreds of inquiries in the days after her death, they didn't seem to be able to find the person responsible. They did receive a letter 10 days after her being found, which was sent from Southampton, dated May 16th, to Alan Rose of Dorset CID. It said, "Dear Sir, I am writing to tell you that the tragic death of Sandra Court was a complete and utter accident. In no form is the person a killer or a murderer. The person concerned is deeply unhappy, hurt, and in total shock. The only reason the person has not come forward is the fact of being afraid that their explanation will not be believed. Please, I beg, take this letter to be of the truth. This letter was actually read out on BBC Crime Watch in the July of 1986, and the claim was later repeated in a telephone call to the BBC, but police were unable to trace the sender of the letter. Police then fingerprinted 1,000 people on the 2nd of August to try and trace who sent the letter, but this was not successful. A police spokesman told the Daily Echo, a newspaper in Bournemouth, the motive for the murder is unclear. There is no evidence of sexual interference, nor were valuable items or large sums of money missing. She had no known enemies. The precise time and location of her death are still not known. The only thing that was missing was a £20 note from her bag. A £10,000 reward was offered by an anonymous donor for anyone able to help Dorset Police catch and bring to justice the person who killed Sandra. Her loving and grief-stricken parents made an emotional 20-minute appeal to holidaymakers and the people of Bournemouth to say, "Help catch Sandy's killer." In the year after Sandra's death, police kept appealing for new information and leads on the case, and in 1989 was the first time John Cannon had been looked into by police. I may do a separate video about John Cannon, but in brief, he was a convicted killer, rapist, and had also been charged for abduction and attempted kidnap. In July 1988, he was given 3 life sentences for the murder of Shirley Banks in Bristol, the attempted kidnapping of Julia Holman on the previous night, the rape of a woman in Reading in 1986, the rape of his girlfriend in December 1980, and several other offences of abductions and sexual offences. He was also the main suspect in the case of Susie Lamplugh, a young estate agent who had mysteriously vanished after meeting a man in a property in Fulham. In 2000, Dorset Police reopened the case of Sandra Court and began liaising with the Metropolitan Police, who had also reopened the case of Susie Lamplugh. While both police forces were investigating, he was questioned in prison on the disappearance of Sandra's death in May 1986. Police had discovered he was actually in Bournemouth on the day Sandra had disappeared, and this was due to a pay and display parking ticket that was in his possession. Although they had this circumstantial piece of evidence against him, he adamantly denied having ever been to Bournemouth on the day in question. It turned out he was also on a weekend leave at the time from a parole hostel the day Sandra was strangled and left by the Avon Causeway. He was serving an 8-year sentence for rape. During the collaborative effort of Dorset Police and the Metropolitan Police, the Met Police discovered a car, which was a red Ford Sierra that John Cannon had access to when Sandra was killed. They had found it in a scrapyard in North London and did forensics on the car. It turned out there were 2 hairs belonging to Sandra, and police were able to link this forensically with DNA. Unfortunately, the DNA evidence was not strong enough to take him to court for her death, as police couldn't prove that they had ever been in the car at the same time. Police also noted that the letter sent in 1986 bore clear similarities to his handwriting. At one point, an author was sending and receiving letters from him in prison as they were writing a book on John Cannon. They decided to show police, and the police found them so helpful that they decided to keep the letters and not return them to the author. Although the police had this evidence, the Crown prosecution decided not to take him to court for the murder of Sandra. This means that her case is still unsolved to this day. Dorset Police have received some 2,000 calls from the public offering information. 11,500 inquiries have been investigated. More than 3,600 people have made statements. 5,000 sets of fingerprints were taken, and almost 63,000 man-hours have been put into this case. She was a young woman who had her whole life ahead of her, and she had dreams and ambitions. She had them snatched away from her. Her family and friends lost someone who was bubbly and bright, and to this day her death still is a mystery. If you or someone you know has any information that would be relevant to the police, please look at the description box and send it to the correct authorities, and hopefully one day her case can be solved and give her family closure.